Hi everyone, thanks for checking out my channel today. I'm Noelle and this is Influence Colorist. Wow, okay, it's been a few months since I last posted, so this video will be more of like a catching up video. I didn't color much the last few months, but I'll show you what I did do. And then I am going to be coloring a page in this book, and while I'm coloring, I'll kind of chat about what I've been up to the last few months. And I'll show you a couple techniques that I use in this style of book. Okay. So the first page I'm going to show you is from the book Disney Mandalas by Hatchet Heroes. And this is definitely a book that I go to when I want to color. I don't have a lot of time. I can use alcohol markers and look up characters for color samples and stuff. So yeah, so I definitely went to this book a few times the last few months. All right, so the page that I did in April is Monsters Inc. We have some characters in this mandala style, and then we have Boo here in the center. Boo was one of my daughter's, I don't know if it was her favorite character when she was little, but I do definitely remember her carrying a little Boo doll around with her. It's so cute. So yeah, loved the colors in this one. Again, they don't repeat too much, which is what I like, and I like the size of the book too. Okay, and then my next page, I also used color pencils for some shading here and there, and white Posca, just to give that texture in Boo's costume. All right, next page is this one, and this one is a June page. So I didn't do anything in May. This book had probably been just sitting on my desk, so I just went ahead and did another page in this book. So Bambi, of course, and we have Thumper, and I don't remember her name, but the little rabbits, and I like the neutral color palette, but then this bright pop of pink in the heart. So this one, again, simple because there's really not a lot of shapes, and they only repeat 4 times. I like how the skunk, obviously black and white, but I think it helps kind of ground and separate these other shapes so you can see everything really nicely. All right, again, also done with Ohuhu markers, and I don't think I did any color pencil shading on this one. Okay, on to the next one. All right, also done in June. This is Dreamland Coloring Whimsical Worlds by Renata Krozek, I believe is how you pronounce that. And this happens to be one of my favorite pages right now. I actually started looking at color palettes, and then I had this book set out as in my stack of books that I wanted to color in, and I kept flipping through the pages, and I didn't know what page I wanted to do, but I kept coming back to this page. It's something so whimsical about this page with the girl. She looks like she's going to a party, but there's all these little miniature houses here, and then she's in a field. So yeah, it's kind of a question of, you know, what's going on in this picture that kind of drew me to it. But the color palette, which I'll put up in a picture here, this is from In Color Labs. I found on Instagram, and this is number 658. I really liked the 2 different shades of kind of warm tones, and then you have a couple of shades of cool tones. I did add the pink in her dress. I just felt like her dress needed to stand out a little bit more. And this book can be intimidating because there's a lot of vegetation, a lot of line art in most of these pages. Some pages not so much, like this one is fairly simple. But yeah, so you get a lot of line art, and in my mind I want to interpret that as everything has to be colored like individually. So looking at this page, I just started with my color palette on the important things that I wanted to show up. And then instead of worrying about having to color in all this vegetation in markers or color pencils, I did the Pebbles chalk pastels, and just chose a few lighter kind of muted greens and just covered that up. And then for here, I did highlight these little dandelions. That's the word. These little shapes reminded me of like the dandelions that you, they're like in that little puffball thing, and then you blow and all the seeds spread out. And then I did incorporate a few of the flowers here in the color palette. So yeah, I just really love the way it turned out. So that's a tip for you guys, is that you don't always have to color everything like individually. If you just want a few certain things to stand out, then color those really brightly, and then everything else can be kind of soft and muted. All right, and then I did use, let's see, Ohuhu markers. I don't even think I used color pencil in here. Oh, I did use some gel pens to kind of highlight in the trees here. I probably should have used a smaller, I think I just used a marker, but I probably should have used like a fine tip or fine liner or something in here, because it colored a little bit out of the lines. But overall, I'm really happy with this page. All right, for the next section of the video, I'm going to be doing a little color and chat, and I'm going to be coloring in this book, Dowdle Doodles, National Parks, by the artist Eric Dowdle. And that is him too. I've actually seen some of his artwork on puzzles, so flipping through this, you might recognize some of his artwork too. But most of the pages are going to be in this style, where it shows his artwork on one side, has some brief information about the national park, and a little code that you can scan and learn more information. And then the other side is the line art of this print. So it looks pretty intimidating when you look at it in just line art form. So it's really nice and helpful to have the print on this side. Now it is, the line art is very basic, like you're not going to have a lot of the details on some of these things, and because it would be so hard to get in there, I think with the line art, that it's just kind of basic form. Up to you how you interpret that, if you want to try to copy just like the print, or just do kind of simple coloring. I prefer the challenge, and I like to do make it look as close as possible to the print as I can. So I'll show you a couple that I've done. Oh, okay, and then also there are some pieces here, some pages that are not like that, so they're kind of done in this style. So I did do one of those pages here, and then this was one of the first pages I colored in the book. And this is all done in color pencil, although I may have used some like white Posca inside the clouds. But I enjoy the challenge of trying to color match and trying to get it to look very similar to the print. Obviously this is done in probably like acrylic paints or oil paints, and this is obviously color pencil. So it's not an exact copy, but I think it's pretty close. All right, and then another one that I did a few years ago is this one. All right, and so as you can see, the trees, I tried to copy kind of that, I'm calling it bubbly look, like little speckled look, textured look. And yeah, so all these little people are very time consuming. And the page I'll be doing in the video is going to be this one. It is Williamsburg, which is in Virginia. And I have great memories of visiting some cousins that lived in Virginia and going to Williamsburg. So I thought this would be fun. And then obviously being July 4th, kind of patriotic. So I went ahead and did some of it already, and I thought this would be a good time to kind of show you how to do some of the things, techniques that I've been doing on here. So I'm going to show you the clouds, the trees, and the brick texture, and a few other little things here and there. Now, I did show you the other page that I did all in color pencil, which is perfectly fine. It worked well. It just takes a long time to get some of these bigger areas like the background completed. The pages here, this one has that kind of different page. So this one I liked, but this page I didn't really care about. So I am going to be using some alcohol markers, but I think the biggest tip I can tell you for these pages, and this book I think is kind of similar to like the Thomas Kincaid Disney books, with the print and then the line art, is you're going to need fine points, so color pencils that you can sharpen pretty fine, and also some like fine tip markers. Okay, so again, I am going to be using a lot of variety of mediums today, but you just have to be careful of what's behind your page. This paper is pretty thick. I did use some Derwent ink tints, applied with water, and it didn't bleed through. So really the only thing I had issues with were the alcohol markers, and that is just to give a base. So if you want to use color pencils as a base or water-based markers as a base, all that should be just fine on these types of books. But I really think you can't get some of these like textures of the flowers unless you have like the acrylic marker pens, which I'll be using. All right, so let me get set up with our clouds first, I believe, and then yeah, I'll just go over some techniques here and then kind of talk about what I've been doing the last few months. Okay, I'm going to start with the clouds first. I've picked out about 3 dominant colors, which are separated with black lines. The darker colors will hide some of the black line, but one where the yellow goes will show through. So I'm just going to take a white Posca and go over the very inner shapes. Once I finish with that, I'm going to let it dry, and then I'm going to move on to the trees. Okay, moving on to the trees, I'm going to do just kind of a base layer using Derwent ink tints. So I'm just going to find these trees here, and I have a nice sharp point on my pencil, and I'm just going to fill in this tree. I'm trying to be somewhat careful of all the little holes in here, but not super careful. I mean, if I color over it, it's okay. And I'm just kind of working into like a medium pressure and gonna fill up all the trees, and then I'm also going to do this on all the other green parts on the page, so like the grassy areas, the bushes, and then the landscape in the front too. Well, hello, how are you guys? So just a brief background about where I've been over the last few months. So back in April, my friend asked if I had anything that I wanted to sell at her neighborhood garage sale. Well, of course. So I started to kind of go through things, but then I started thinking about my redecorating my craft room. I usually will paint and things like that in the summertime when I'm on break. So yeah, that kind of got the ball rolling into thinking about what I wanted to do in my office/craft room. So I started planning that, and one thing led to another, and it turned into this big like 2-room project that I needed to finish by mid-June since I had company coming. So when you walk into my house, on the right side of the front door you have my office slash craft room, and then on the left side is kind of our like or not formal, very casual living room, and we have like kind of a game room in there too. And it's all painted in the same color, this golden rod yellow, which was throughout the house, and slowly over the years I've just been kind of repainting it. So this year I really wanted to tackle those two rooms to get rid of that yellow. And so yeah, that it just kind of snowballed from there. Most of the furniture in my craft room, or I should say like my craft room side, is all white. And then on the office side of the room, the furniture was kind of this heavy cherry wood furniture. So I wanted to get rid of that and do something different with my desk. And so yeah, I ended up painting a file cabinet. So taking all the stuff out of the file cabinet, going through all that, and I don't know, do you guys do this too, where you start one thing and then it just leads to another thing you need to clean out, and so on and so on. So yeah, so that is part of the story. All right, next I'm taking the water brush to activate the ink tints, and just kind of in a short little stroke movements, fill all that in. And again, I'll be doing this on all the trees and the landscape. All right, so now that the white Posca has dried, and I'm gonna let the ink tints dry, I'm gonna start back on my clouds. So I'm just gonna do the center part first, which is this kind of yellow color, and just work that into the shape, and then I'll move on to the other colors. All right, so right around all that time of painting, my husband ended up hurting his knee. He was supposed to be helping me move some big pieces of furniture so that I can paint, but he ended up going to a jiu-jitsu class and hurting his knee, of course. So he couldn't put any pressure on it, and it was on crutches. Thankfully, my son was able to help me with some of the heavy stuff and hanging a new light fixture that I wanted in another room. So yeah, that kind of slowed me down a little bit, and unfortunately my husband, he does have a pacemaker, so he couldn't get in for an MRI right away, because they have a special MRI for people with pacemakers. And so that took a couple weeks to figure out what was actually wrong with his knee, and then when they did find out, he had to have surgery. So he had surgery on his meniscus, and that surgery, I guess they said it was going to be a long recovery. So he is still on crutches as of today, and probably has about 3 more weeks on crutches still. So not allowed to put any weight on it, which has been really hard on him. So yeah, during the week of his surgery, we had company. So his in-laws, and we had cousins and an aunt, were all with us for about 5 days. All right, so let's work on the trees a little bit more. So I'm going to be using some markers for this. And as you can see on the trees, there is some separation in like the branches. So you have like little clumps here and there on the trees. So I'm going to take a water-based marker. I'm actually using both water-based and alcohol markers. And first I'm just going to kind of dot out with my lightest color, which is this water-based marker. I'm gonna dot out the little sections that I want to separate. So yeah, just taking it, kind of figuring out where they go, using the print, the artist print, as my guide. All right, and then I'm going to take my alcohol markers, but you can definitely still use water-based markers. And I'm just going to, first I'm going to start with my darkest color, so then I'm just going to kind of use these little dotting techniques with the brush end and do the darkest part. So if you can see on the print sample, the bottom part of those little bunches are dark green. So I'm using the darkest green and just kind of going over those little separated areas, adding a few dark spots coming up into that area, but concentrating more on the lower end. All right, now I'm going to take the medium green and I'm going to do the same technique. So I'm going to kind of go over the darker area first and then concentrate more on like the middle section and then adding a few little darker greens up, going up in that little section. And then last, taking that lighter green and filling up more of that space, concentrating more on the top. So that gives just a nice little texture to the trees. And I'm gonna do the same technique on all these other bushes here in the front, along the wall. And then the grass, I'm just gonna cover with the water brush. Okay, on to the bricks. So the first step for the bricks is I'm gonna take this kind of um, yellow, almost in a golden range, and I'm just gonna fill in all the areas that are gonna be brick. And this kind of might be overkill. It's basically just a bottom layer. It's all going to be covered up with color pencil and a darker reddish color, but this just kind of helps me figure out where the brick areas are first. So yeah, so I'm just going to pick out all the brick areas and color it in this shade. All right, and along with having company in June, we've also had a house guest that is staying with us for the summer. It's my son's girlfriend, so she is staying with us all summer, which has been really nice to get to know her some more. But yeah, it's just kind of made me, with everything going on, not very motivated to color, and then just trying to find time to color, and definitely coloring, doing a video. So anyway, all right, let's get back to this. Now that I have all the brick colored or designated for that one color, now I'm going to pick out some color pencils in some brick tones. So some warm browns, more like burgundy shades, things that you would think of for like brick colors. All right, so there's the 4 brick colors, and obviously in the print, the brick is laid very nicely and evenly, but I'm not going to do that. That would take forever. So I'm just going to take my 4 colors and randomly put them in brick-like patterns. And the darker shades, if you can see on the one that I've already colored, are going to stand out more. So yeah, I'm going to concentrate a little bit heavier on this darker shade. All right, so I'll keep doing that with all of the 4 colors. And this little area I noticed in the original print is a little bit darker brick, so it must be like a different brick in on the building. So I'm just going to use not the darkest of the reds, but it is probably the second darkest color, and I'm just going to fill in all these darker brick areas. It is different than the shadow, so there are shadow areas, but this is just, it looks like a different color brick. Okay, so all the color pencil bricks are finished. Now I'm gonna take a alcohol marker again, and it's not too dark. It's kind of a dark reddish orange color, but it still has some translucency to it. So I can go right over these bricks and it's going to pick up those brick colors still. So I'm getting that darker red look overall, but it still kind of picks up all those little color pencil brick colors. All right, I'll show you a quick thing of how I do the shadows and then I'll finish up the brick. So I have kind of two shades of gray here. So along these windows, or sorry, underneath this roof part is going to be a shadow. So I'm just gonna take that gray and carefully go under that little area. And yeah, so the gray is the same concept of that red color I just did. It still has some translucency to it, so you're going to pick up the color that is behind, which is cool because that gives you a more natural shadow look. So some shadows are going to be darker, so that's why I have the two grays. So if there's an area that looks really dark, then I'll use that darker gray. All right, so I finished the rest of the brick and I'm just gonna show you again with the shadows. So like on this part of the chimney and underneath that little roof part is really dark. So I'm gonna take the darker gray and use it for that shadow. All right, so that's all finished. Now I'm gonna work on the roof tiles and the same kind of concept. They, in the print, it is very nice and neatly each, like you can see each individual brick, which I am not gonna do. So I'm gonna start with my color pencils here, and I have shades of kind of light blue to purple colors, kind of a periwinkle color. And I'm gonna start with filling this whole area in this light purple first. All right, once I have that base, then I'm gonna start building my color. So light blue working to this periwinkle and then to a darker bluish purple. So I just keep building these light layers. Okay, making sure it is dark on the top, or sorry, dark on the bottom, and then it fades to light at the top. All right, now that I have the colors pretty much the way I want them, I am going to use a straight edge and a fine liner purple pen, and I'm going to start putting in the lines for those tile or like brick pattern. So they're pretty thin, and then I just do the little horizontal lines and then the vertical lines. So I'll do that all the way through, and then as you can see, I darkened up the purple too. I felt like it needed to be just a little bit darker. And then I'm going to take my grays again with the alcohol markers and fill in those shadows. And home life is starting to settle down now and getting a little bit more quiet in the house. I still have a few more weeks before my daughter goes back to school and then I go back to work. But I'm hoping I should be able to get more coloring done this month. So thanks for hanging in there, guys. All right, for this cobblestone area, I'm going to use alcohol markers and colored pencils, using the lightest shade on this alcohol marker for the base. And on the other things, I went ahead and colored where the shadows were, but in this case, since my shadows are purple, I'm going to skip around those shadows and then just color them purple later on. All right, and then using the darker of the alcohol markers, I'm just adding little spots for the texture in the cobblestone, and I'm going over the whole thing in more of that darker golden yellow. All right, so this is going to be for the shadow. I'm going to take a purple alcohol marker and that periwinkle kind of shade of blue, And that is just going to help soften the edges around the shadow. So I'm first going to fill in the shadow with the purple color, and then I'll go around the edges with that color pencil. And again, that's just going to kind of help and soften the area between the shadow and the cobblestone. All right, I won't color all the rest of the little details on video with you, but for the flag, I'm going to use a fine liner pen to get into those really tight little spaces there. Coloring with alcohol marker with that blue part, and then I use a white gel pen to fill in for the stars, because those are not in the line art. And then, yeah, so this is the area where I'm going to be using a lot of fine liners and the very, very tip of the brush markers. All right, for the shadow, I'm using more of a bluish gray, and I just look at the reference picture and see where that needs to go. Again, it's more of a translucent gray, so it's going to go right over the color and not interrupt the color at all. Okay, so for down here at the bottom where these bushes are, I'm going to use some acrylic paint pens. And I'm just dotting them, again, looking at the reference picture and just kind of dotting the paint over on top. This is really nice because with it being paint, it doesn't want to like kind of soak into the paper or into that background color, so it lays right on top of the markers. All right, next for the sky, I'm using Derwent ink tints. I'm using 3 different shades of blue to go from that light at the bottom to the darker at the top. Now, usually the Derwent ink tints isn't very friendly with me. We're not really great friends. For some reason, it tends to be very blotchy for me and not smooth. So we're gonna try it out again. I don't know if I just don't use enough Derwent ink tints or what, but it seems like as soon as I apply water, it just kind of gets blotchy. So in these smaller areas, it's going to look really nice, but once I get to the bigger area, that's when you can start to see more blotchiness. But I'll try to correct that too. All right, so adding the water now to activate that color, and you can see that blue looks really nice, matches good. All right, everyone, I finally finished the page, adding all the little details. I finished up with the sky. I used Derwent ink tints for that. I had to do several layers of it for it to kind of come out more solid. It was kind of blotchy in the beginning, and I always struggle with Derwent ink tints. Sometimes I put in a color pencil overlay on top of that, but I just tried to do multiple layers of the Derwent ink tints, which I think it looks better now. So things I'm really happy with on here are the brick. I think the brick turned out really well. The shadows, and I really like the trees and the flowers with the acrylic paint pens. Things I'm not real happy with, well, not necessarily that I'm not happy with, but I don't think I got the colors right on here, and that is the roof tiles. It is definitely a lot darker on this side than on that side, but it's not all bad because I think the purple ties in to kind of the purple shadow down below on the cobblestone. I think all the little details on the people and stuff turned out good. Obviously, I don't do the faces. I think that would be too hard, and I don't know if I can get them to look right or not. But so they're kind of just left blank and added a little bit of shadow. So I did have some little speckles here from the Ohuhu alcohol markers. When you open up the cap, sometimes the ink kind of comes out, but that doesn't bother me too bad. The clouds, I'm not a big fan of how the clouds turned out. I maybe shouldn't have used the acrylic paint pen for outlining that black line, and maybe just stuck with the black line, but the colors aren't too bad. It's just the color pencils did not want to go over that Posca paint. So anyway, I think overall it's a good page, and thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.